Situated at, they called it Oneida Castle. And the only reason they called it castle is because um, uh, they had, there was logs surrounding every village, a palisade. And so the Europeans thought that looked like a castle, so that's why they named it castle. And they were returning to mid-state New York after the Revolutionary War. The Oneidas had been dispersed to Niagara all the way in the west, the western boundary, and they had been dispersed to Schenectady on the eastern boundary during the war. Uh, they were ransacked. Their new houses that they had were building were burned to the ground. All of their food stores were destroyed, and they were used to storing thousands of bushels of corn and beans and dried vegetables because they maintained their food for years in advance. That 7 years is not just a figure of speech. They actually did that. And so they were living in the mid-state and trying to reconstitute themselves after the Revolutionary War because everything had been destroyed. And a lot of the young men had fought in the army at that time for George Washington, and many of them died. We do not even have the names of those young men because the military did not keep the names of the rank and file, just any officers. They kept those names, but otherwise the young men were not accounted for, but they were gone. And so that's what happened after the Revolutionary War. They were trying to reestablish themselves, to build new homes, to get their fields of corn growing. They had no other way of providing for themselves. When they were in Schenectady, they were beggars because they were without food, without clothing, and they were dying, and they were beggars in Schenectady. There was a treaty in 1788. There was another treaty in 1784 securing all of the lands to the Oneidas with the Continental Congress, because that was before there was a United States. The Constitution of the United States was not passed until 1789, so any treaty before that was with the continental United States. But unfortunately, the continental United States did not live up to their treaties, nor did the United States after the Constitution was passed. Actually, the whole state of New York belonged to the tribes. The entire state, from Albany and the Hudson River, all in the east, all the way to Niagara Falls in the west. That was Iroquois territory, part of the Six Nations. Each one had their own territory. And it was getting diminished further and further by these illegal treaties with the state, number one, and with the war, a Revolutionary War, number two, with death and disease, probably, number three, and when you move fast forward to 1830, President Jackson was the president, and he was the author and the promoter for removal of all Indian tribes east of the Mississippi to be removed west of the Mississippi.